Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. I am John Schmeelk, joined by Paul Dottino. Hope everyone had an excellent wild card weekend. A lot to talk about today. Not a ton of news from a Giants perspective. No. We did have Mike Vrabel announced as the Patriots head coach yesterday. There were initial reports that he might try to take Shane Bowen with him. Then subsequent reports indicated that's not going to happen. The Giants have not made any official decisions. Then again, they don't make any official announcements that they're keeping certain people. So no news with any of these coaches means that they're here until we hear otherwise. So just to keep in mind in terms of how you guys want to think about that. But overall, Paul, I thought a pretty good wild card weekend. Not great. A couple games that got out of hand quickly, including the one last night, which was almost non-competitive, which was really surprising to me.
Wow.
And I want to talk a little bit about why I think some of these teams won and lost. So, and I think there are some common threads from game to game here that I think are significant. Okay. And I'm going to refer this back to the Giants and how they build their team, right?
Okay, so, and we have not spoken about this.
Not a second.
It's interesting you just said that because I had a few thoughts about that myself.
Okay.
So let's see what we can compare.
So here are the two teams that I thought should have had a really good chance of winning but didn't, okay? Like there are some teams like, I didn't think the Steelers were beating the Ravens, even though they familiar, maybe the familiarity thing, but just talent-wise, I didn't think they were going to win that game.
Understood.
I didn't think that the one of the games that I think was not going to be very close. It was one of the game that I did not have a lot of confidence in. But two
Buffalo.
teams. Yeah, Buffalo. Thank you. Buffalo, Denver. That was.
And I'm a
game.
Knicks guy, but I didn't think that they had much chance.
And Knicks did not look great, and and I'll get to the Bronco defense in a second, by the way. So, which has been awesome this year, by the way. But I want to talk about a specific aspect of their defense in that game. So, the Chargers and the Vikings were two teams that I thought really had a good chance of winning, and I thought the Packers did to a certain extent as well. Though a lot of the injuries in that game really made it tough on them. And Jordan Love, I don't think he was 100% with the elbow, but he didn't play well either. We'll get to that too.
No.
The Chargers and Vikings could not protect their quarterbacks in those two games.
Not at all.
Especially the interior of their offensive lines. They got murdered. And Justin Herbert had a really good year. A really good bounce-back year after a down year, I thought, last season. But he was not good in that game.
No.
And put that on his shoulders. He deserves a lot of that. But they could not protect him. And they have two awesome offensive tackles on that team in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. And those guys played pretty well.
One of the better duos in the league.
They did not play poorly in that game. But Zion Johnson, who has not worked out as a first-round pick, and I loved him coming out. I will take the L on that.
Out of BC. Both of us did.
Jamari Salyer, who had a good early part of his career. Now he struggled a little bit. Trey Pipkins was in there. Their center escapes me in the moment. It's a veteran. It's an undersized guy. The name just is on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it. And then last night with the Vikings, look, they lost their starting left tackle earlier in the year, and that impacted them. They managed to avoid it, I think, and try to overcome that most of the year.
Yeah.
But combine that with their guard play has been a struggle for a decent part of the year. They went from Ed Ingram to somebody else, and we know about Bradbury and his issues with power in the middle. We saw that against the Giants 2 years ago with Dexter Lawrence. And there are certain quarterbacks that are in the elite tier. And right now, Paul, my elite tier is just 4 names long. My elite tier is Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. That's it.
Those are the same 4 that we discussed as elite last week, and it hasn't changed.
It has not changed. If anything, I think we've seen distance grow between them and the tier after that. They can overcome stuff like that. Even somebody as good as Justin Herbert, but is not in that elite tier, as great of a year as Sam Darnold has had, we know he has issues, had issues with pressures his whole career, which is why his career did not go very well up until this year, because he was on terrible offensive lines with the Jets, terrible offensive lines in Carolina. Go down the list. He's always faced pressure, and he does not handle pressure particularly well, partly because he likes to hold the football, partly because he just gets flustered. Some guys get flustered in the pocket. Some guys are calm, some guys get flustered. So
are Stafford and Goff near that?
I would put them in that. I would put them in the second tier. Goff does not handle pressure, in my opinion, particularly well, which is why it's so important he's behind such a great offensive line in Detroit. Stafford's weird, Pearson. He has periods of a season in a game where he plays like the guys in the elite group, but he doesn't sustain it over a 17-game stretch.
I agree with that.
And again, he's like, what is he, 36, 37 now? So it makes sense. He can't sustain that play, but it's there, which is why they're so dangerous against the Eagles next week, by the way.
He can do it on occasion.
Correct. Because he's got some mobility, he's got some moxie to him, he's still got a cannon.
Heck of an arm.
All that stuff. So yes, good point, Pearson. They're in that second group where I put him with Herbert in there, Dak, Jordan Love, kind of Trevor Lawrence. I think maybe slid down a tier, but that those types of guys.
The thing you got to remember,
Stroud I think is tier 3. He had a rough year this year.
By definition, elite means only a few.
Correct, and it should be more than 4 or 5,
right?
Because then you're getting to like 20%. Then you're getting to like 10%. Like
if you said to me you had 8 guys, I would say, John, you can't do that
because there's no way there's 8 elite guys.
That's right.
Correct. I'm with you.
Elite
100%.
by definition is a relative few.
So that was my first thing. Even if you have a good quarterback, you got to be able to protect them. All right, you have to. You have to be able to protect these guys, especially up the middle. And now, again, guys that are elite athletes, and I'll get to. And I guess I'll bring that into the mix now. This is why I think Paul, especially for a young quarterback who is and this is why quarterbacks used to sit all the time. Because it takes a couple years for a young quarterback to figure out the NFL passing game. Read, pre-snap, post-snap, throw out anticipation. All those things that great NFL quarterbacks do, it's hard for a rookie to do that right away.
No doubt.
Which is why I think in the modern NFL, it's so important for your young quarterback to be really evasive and elusive in the pocket. And it's the same reason why some of these elite quarterbacks now, and even Mahomes and Burrow, while they're not athletes to the level as Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, those guys are very slippery in the pocket. They make people miss. They slide around. They have great pocket presence.
Escapability is the word that I like to use.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It's not mobility. It's escapability.
Being slippery, right? Guys can't get their hands on. Like Daniel Jones was a great straight-ahead speed athlete. Was not slippery in the pocket.
Not as much, no.
No, he just wasn't. That's just the way it is. So it's the combination of protection and then from the young quarterback, Paul, and I'll combine. I these are 2 separate points, but I'll combine them.
That's okay.
Like that's what made Jaden Daniels so difficult in that game. Like there were points where the Bucs got pressure on him. They had him tackled. They had him corralled. But his freakish athleticism allowed him to extend plays and run or create enough time to throw a pass down the field and complete a first down. He had some nice pocket moments in the game, Daniels, but it was his ability, and Robert Mays used this term. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this term. I'm sure Pearson is because he's younger.
Yeah.
So when you play video games sometimes, and Pearson will understand this, sometimes you do something called rage quit, where something happens in the game that's so annoying, you just turn it off. It's like, I can't believe that just happened. I'm done. And you just turn the thing off because it's so frustrating that you turn it off.
As one of little patience, I have experienced that many times.
And when you play a quarterback like that, they make you want to rage quit. Right? It's like we did everything right defensively. We schemed it up. We have an unblocked rusher, right?
It's like that throw Josh Allen made on 4th down.
In the back of the end zone. Perfect example, right? Jaden Daniels stiff arms Kalijah Kancey. He outweighs him by 120 pounds. He stiff arms him, rolls out, makes the play for the first down late in that game, and that gave the Commanders the game-winning score. So protect your quarterback, but then sometimes you can't. Can your quarterback do special things like that? And especially as a young guy, because again, the quarterbacking stuff is going to take time to figure out.
Yes.
But the mobility comes right away. So that can help you be effective and mitigate some of the deficiencies in the passing game stuff if you're a really good athlete and they have escapability. So does your quarterback make you want, like, does he have that stuff where it's like, oh my God, I did everything right, but he still beat me? Right? Some quarterbacks have that in them, some quarterbacks don't. Like, Jared Goff is not going to make you rage quit. He's a really good quarterback, but he's not going to make you do that. Neither is Dak Prescott. Okay. Maybe like when he first came into the league, when he was more mobile, he could have done some of that, but not anymore. Right? So when you're trying to build a team, you got to protect. And when I think you're looking at quarterbacks, especially if you want your young quarterback to succeed early, I think he has to be a really good athlete. Even Drake May. He was the second most effective running quarterback this year. That dude's an athlete. Caleb Williams is an athlete. Bo Nix can move. That guy is an athlete. So those are two of the first things that I kind of put them together there that I thought was very important when I, looked at the games this weekend.
Consider how much more athletic defensive players have become. Quicker, faster, the pass rush.
And smaller, by the way. And I'll get to that on one of my other points.
Well, we've started to see some bigger guys, too, as teams have become more involved in the running game and the power game.
And we'll talk
That's
about
kind
that.
of changed a little bit, okay? Thank goodness it's back. But because defenses are much more athletic than they used to be years ago, you were right, John. It is definitely to your advantage to have a quarterback who has some athleticism, who has the escapability, because it's harder and harder and harder and harder in today's NFL with the number of athletes that they can put into their pass rushing package on the other side of the ball for you to be able to consistently hold up if your offensive line won't be there and give it to you. It's just harder and harder to do.
And we saw that with the Chargers, the Vikings. By the way, Herbert and Darnold they don't lack mobility.
They're
guys
not
are pretty good
statues.
athletes.
They're not statues.
But there's a level to these things.
That's correct.
Right.
And to further complicate matters, okay, is that the Rams, the Chargers, the Steelers, all three of those teams couldn't get a damn thing going in the run game.
Well, not the Rams. You're talking about the Vikings.
Vikings. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I got you. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Nothing. So the defenses were allowed to cheat. They knew what was going on, and then the game flow started to make it harder and harder and harder for you to even try to be balanced.
And the Broncos couldn't run it either, by the way.
And what happens?
Yeah.
I mean, some of this stuff, really what you're talking about, some of this, you can trace all the veins back to football 101 all over again.
Absolutely. And you led me perfectly to another thing. And we've talked about this trend for the last 3 or 4 years, and I think we've seen a couple teams, specifically the Eagles, kind of take advantage of it a little bit the last few years, but other teams haven't really. Now I think we're seeing more teams do it. The importance of the power running game. And look, we always had the running game, but it was a lot of the last 10 years have been dominated by the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, or really the Mike Shanahan outside zone scheme.
Yeah.
No, but that's where it started. It started with the Broncos and Mike Shanahan back back further than that when he was with the 49ers, right? A lot of outside zone stuff, a lot of zone runs.
A lot of people love that.
And the way defenses adjusted to that scheme was by getting smaller and faster.
Yes.
Well, you know what you do when defenses get smaller and faster?
You pound them. You play bully ball.
You play downhill. You run double team blocks. You run straight ahead. You have pullers, power, counter tray. All this type of stuff where now you're seeing teams like Philadelphia. Lord knows the Ravens do it. Even the Packers to an extent with Josh Jacobs in that game, I thought ran with power pretty well. These teams that can control the line of scrimmage and run the ball with power it makes defenses do things they don't want to do. And that can really make it advantageous for your passing game. Now, eventually you still got to make explosive plays. But by having that power running game that gets you 5 or 6 yards a pop, guess what? The other teams then have to come up, and it opens up possibilities to get those explosive plays. So that's how I kind of look at it, Paul, where I think finally we're seeing the trends start to flip a little bit back to the power run game, which is probably not since like the early 2000s when we kind of had it last there.
It's been a while. 2 things off of your points. Number 1, if you've got the power run game, it gives you a better opportunity to control the narrative and the game flow.
Yes.
And the tempo
I agree.
of how the game will be played out. And if you're the type of team that is going to rely on technically sound football that doesn't make a lot of mistakes to shoot themselves in the foot, that is tremendously to your advantage. That's number 1. Number 2, if you look at this year's statistics, for the first time in NFL history, first time, this league is forever years old, the top 6 teams running the ball all made the playoffs.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
First time ever.
Who were the 6, out of curiosity? It was Philly, Baltimore, Buffalo, I'm sure was one of them.
I'd have to go back and look it up.
Okay. I'm sure the Lions were one of them, right? They've got to be one of them, so that's 4. trying to think who else would be in that group. I'm see if I can figure out off the top of my head. Packers probably, I bet, with Josh Jacobs.
I would go for them in order.
Probably 5. I don't know if maybe because of Jaden Daniels, the Commanders are on that list.
Here we go.
The Rams like to run it though too.
In order.
Yes, give me order. What do you got?
In order. Where is it? Here we go. Rushing yards in order. Ravens, Eagles, Commanders
are
Bucks,
Ooh.
Packers, Lions.
And the Bills, by the way, are 9th.
8th.
Yeah.
No. 6, 7, 8, 9th.
I thought the Bills would be higher because of Josh Allen.
But your top 6 all made the playoffs. That's the first time ever in professional football history. The run game, and especially the power run game, has kind of resurfaced, folks. And what goes around comes around.
And I want to go. And look, the NFL's cyclical. We always go through all these things.
Yeah.
Like now, cover 2's in play again when that was a big thing in the early 2000s too. So I think the game that I think really highlights that point, Paul, was the Bronco-Bills game.
Oh, yeah.
Where they have an alien elite quarterback in Josh Allen. But they didn't even make him do that much stuff in the game.
No.
They dominated up front so thoroughly, and the Broncos have one of the best defenses in football. They've been legitimately great all year, but they've done it by getting leads and rushing the passer.
They want you to have to throw it.
They have a lot of undersized, very effective and very skilled, like the Nick Benito, who we talked about in our draft process a couple years ago. What do we say? Really good speed pass rusher, undersized. They got a bunch of those types of guys on that roster. Well, guess what? The Bills just said, okay. The Bills, I think, ran, 16 or 18? One or the other. It was the most times in a game they had used 6 offensive linemen on the field. They did it 16 or 18 times in that game. I don't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere in the high teens.
You go jumbo. That's it.
And guess what? All those twists and stunts and that other fancy stuff you run with your small guys up front, if you're playing from now, if you have a great offense and you're playing from ahead, like the Cowboys have the last couple of years, not this year, but the 2 years prior, right? Smaller guys, speed, twist, stunt.
That's
you
fine.
have a lead, it's going to work.
That's fine.
But the minute you're behind and the other team's just pounding the hell out of you, you don't. It's not like you can pivot and do something else.
No.
Like that's. It's like, Seth Rogen in the movie where like the dice roll dance. It's all he's got. All they got is the dice roll dance, right? That's all he. That's all they have.
Okay.
And if they're gonna pound it on you, you're gonna get the ball pounded on you. Like. That's it. And the Broncos, who, again, Sean Payne did a hell of a job this year. They got a really good defense. Patrick Surtain might be the best cornerback in football. You know how much that matters when the other team could just run it for 5 or 6 yards whenever they want?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything. So even for a team like the Bills, who has that great quarterback, and I think one of the reasons he's had such a great year, they've taken so much off his plate because of the Bills' ability to run the ball, which, by the way, more than one back, too. James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson have all had moments over the course of the year for them.
That's why when you get to the postseason and you're reducing the field of teams that you could possibly play, you really have to look at the matchups more than anything else.
Oh, it's a matchup league. Absolutely.
It's not about wins and losses. I don't care which team had more wins. Okay? What I care about is how do they match up? And, Parcells used to say all the time, and this is one of my favorite Parcells-isms. You want to impose your will on the opposition.
When you do that, and that happens up front.
That's it. Trenches, baby. Trenches.
Same thing with pass rush, right? And I think I didn't write this point down, but it goes to the other side of the pass protection point that I made earlier. The Rams pass rush dominated that game from start to finish, right? The Texans pass rush against the Chargers dominated.
Oh, it was brutal.
That game from start to finish. And this is where the Giants, I think, are actually in okay shape because you have a number of pass rushers that can help. It's not as dominant as they need it to be. They still need to add more interior defensive linemen,
for sure,
which I think is important, again, to stop the run part of it, and also interior pass rush, which we talked about the importance of that. You have Dexter, you need somebody else in there too. So can you rush the passer consistently? Like the Eagles still just win up front. That's how they win.
Yep.
Right? That's how they win. So it's another thing that I think just the importance of consistently winning up front, which, bring this back to the Giants, and I think one or two other things here, but if they still want to try to figure out a way to improve the offensive line to make it better, even though, again, more acceptable last year, I'm very much in favor of still trying to upgrade that unit however you possibly can.
We spend quite a bit of time after free agency discussing that the Giants, by signing the guys that they signed, were going to be a better pass protection offensive line than a run offensive line. We knew that.
They raised their floor.
We knew that.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line was going to be better than it was historically bad the year before. We knew that. But we also knew, and we discussed this, John, I can't even remember when we first started doing it, but we discussed it throughout the offseason. The Giants were probably going to be more about quick game and passing, use the pass to set up the run, because the offensive line that they've built is not a power, grinded-out offensive line. It's more of a technique, finesse, pass pro offensive line. Now, it doesn't mean you can't win that way. You have to scheme according to the appropriate philosophy that you're going with.
And by the way, I thought there were some games like the Steeler game where the line actually did run block pretty well and better than I thought they would.
They did have some really nice games, and Tyrone Tracy was able to take advantage of that. Okay? But that was not going to be their forte based on the guys that they assembled. Now, again, there are teams that will win a lot of games doing it with a more of a technique-oriented line. Ultimately, I've always believed, going back to the core of football, is that if you build it with a more powerful offensive line and play bully ball and play smash mouth, I've always thought that that would enhance your chances of being able to control the narrative of the game and therefore be in better shape, especially in this weather, in the Northeast, when it gets rugged and tough and you're really smashing shoulder pads come playoff time. That doesn't mean, again, it does not mean that you can't win the other way. It's a different style, and I just think that it's a little riskier.
Now, but I will say this.
But you can do it.
I don't want to sacrifice pass protection, though.
That's why I'm saying
because
that.
In the end,
you still got to be able to throw the ball.
Against good teams, how many games are decided in the final 3 minutes when you have to throw the ball to win?
Right. You still have to be able to do it.
Right. But if you can combine those two and have guys that can pass protect and be powerful.
That's perfect.
Well, look at the Philadelphia.
Well, exactly. Bingo, bango. You got a winner there. And That's what the deal is,
Correct.
you know? So the hardest part, and I think you will second this, we have not talked about this, but the hardest part is that if you get a couple of linemen, a couple of pieces on your line that can do those kinds of things, they're really good at technique, they're really good at the finesse stuff, they're athletic, but they'll also punch you in the mouth. You're not letting them out of the building.
No, those guys don't leave their team.
They don't leave.
They don't.
So now, if you're Team A or Team X that wants to try to get some of those guys, you got to try to piecemeal it together one piece at a time, because those other guys are not getting set free.
And keep adding. Like,
Right.
the offensive line is never a finished product. You're always adding guys trying to get better.
Now,
100%.
We've discussed John Mara's mandate about the 3 priorities he had for this team coming into this year, now 2025. And he used offensive line depth was number 3 on his list, behind quarterback and defense. He said offensive line depth. I'm in total agreement. Get a moose. Go get a moose on the offensive line. One of these big, you-know-what, SO whatevers.
Now, right now, Trey Smith
Get a moose.
is the best guard that's hitting free agency. Are you willing to shell out like $20 million for him?
I don't see that happening.
I'm just throwing a potential free agent name at you. And again, he's under contract with the Chiefs if he happens to become an unrestricted free agent.
You know, but go find me a moose in the second or third round on the second day of the draft, a big, strapping, physical son of a you-know-what.
Yeah.
Go get somebody from the middle of the plains where they give them that corn-fed beef and just punch somebody in the mouth with the guys.
You want to draft an Iowa offensive lineman is basically what you're
I got
telling
no
me.
problem with
Yes,
that. Wisconsin? How about that?
Yeah, same difference. No, I think they mostly eat cheese up there, not corn, but that's okay. Final 2 things. Do you have enough playmakers? I do think there's a level of which you need a certain amount of playmakers, and the Chargers and the Steelers are 2 teams that I think you saw the deficit of playmakers with those 2 teams this weekend.
Yeah.
It's just not enough. And you see with certain teams like Nico Collins. I know they lost, but Mike Evans, what that elite playmaker can do for those types of offenses in terms of helping lead those teams forward. And then the last thing I'll just say is, guys, NFL is a simple game. Don't give the ball to the other team. Chargers, Packers, Vikings, Bucks. Why those 4 teams in the end lose those games? They gave the football away. And mostly in those 4 games, it was the quarterback that did it. Because the quarterback has their hands on the football more than any other position. And if you don't protect the football, especially in these high-leverage games against good teams, you ain't going to win. Protect the ball. And the Giants did not do a good job of that this year.
I did not keep track because I was in a bunch of different places watching the different games over this first round. So I was not sitting at home counting up what I was about to say. But I would love to have made a chart, and maybe I'll do it in the next round, John.
Well, I can bring it up. You want to do a takeaway
No.
chart?
Here's what I'm going to. No.
Okay.
This is what I was going to say. I would like to put a chart together for each of the playoff games, and maybe I'll do it in this next round. Every time a team fails to make a routine play and just flat out gives up the play with sloppiness, stupidity, does something stupid that just gives up a routine play. Take a tally of that and then put another column and say, okay, now, how many plays did they make above the X's and the O's? And keep a tally of those. I would be absolutely positively shocked if that chart does not also tell you at the end of the game who won and who lost.
Paul, there were 4 teams that were minus in turnover ratio this week. They all lost. Chargers, Bucks, Vikings, Packers. Broncos and Steelers were even. But again, they were big talent differentials in those 2 games. So,
I'm sure,
folks.
and again, there were a number of blowouts or at least late blowouts in these first round playoff games. But I'm sure if we went back and looked at the highlights, I am sure that we could chart at least 3 or 4 like eye-opening plays that guys made on the winning teams because they get those plays, losing teams don't.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah, I'm with you. So those are my major takeaways from the weekend as to why
All good
some
stuff.
of the teams won and they lost. So
And this is stuff that, you'd like to see the Giants check off more of those boxes because that's how they're going to get better.
and how much did we talk about quarterback play in that? A lot. So I mean, it's a huge
in
part
there.
of it. All right.
Absolutely.
201-939-4513. Giants Huddle Podcast, folks. On that feed right now is draft season. Tony and I recorded yesterday. I'll tweet that out a little bit later on today as well. We do a review of the college football semifinals and some talk about some more of the declarations, guys coming to the pros, guys going back to school.
Yeah, the Penn State guy's going back. How about that?
I mean, have you seen him play football?
He needs it. I know.
And both their running backs are going back too, which I thought was a little
I didn't see
surprising.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
Tayshaun Allen and Nico Singleton both going back. So probably smart. It's a really good running back draft this year. So even if you're a good back, you might get pushed in day 3. So I get their decision there. All right, 201-939-4513. Let's go to Dave in Michigan, Pearson, because I think he wants to talk about one of the topics we talked about in our open here. Dave, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Dave. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you guys. Thanks again for, I know it was a rough season, but you guys do an amazing job, the whole podcast crew, and we're appreciative.
Thank you.
One thing, and I know, John, you probably see some of my ranty tweets.
They are ranty, Dave. I'm not going to lie. They're very ranty.
They're universally seen and noticed, Dave. We all see them.
Anyway, so I got some bullet points because I don't call every week,
Yeah, go ahead. You got
I'm gonna bounce through some things. One
Sure.
is, you guys have noticed that Deion Sanders is trying to position his son to go to the Giants. He's basically said he's not going to the Titans and he's not going to the Browns. And
Has he said that?
think it's awkward as hell because.
No, but Dave, real quick, Dave, I'm being honest. I did not see him say those 2 things.
Somebody has told me Sanders has already hinted that he did not want to see his son on the Browns. I've heard that, but secondhand.
I have not seen anything public.
Was the Titans too, Dave?
It was in an interview, and he is really
I didn't
trying
see
to
that
steer his son into New York. But I think it's awkward as heck because I'm not convinced Bowen wants either, the kid from Miami or Sanders.
You mean Dable?
As a number 3 pick. So.
You mean Dable or Shane? You mean, right? You said Bowen.
Yeah. One other thing, I confess, I have not seen enough games with Justin Fields to know whether or not he's, Shane Dable would view him and study his games to know if he had a higher ceiling than he's been able to project at either Chicago or Pittsburgh. But he to me, I hear what you say, Paul, about Garoppolo, but I guess I don't see one of these statue quarterbacks as being the right bridge guy. And so Fields, if there's some consensus that he's got a higher ceiling, the prospect of maybe drafting Travis Hunter, if he's there at 3, and having a mobile quarterback, with experience, with what we already have, sounds very attractive to me. I mean, that's just a thought. And I also want to say...
And by the way, Dave, I think that would be a worry for Paul, too, having a non-mobile quarterback that can't really move around that well. I think that's fair, and I think Fields, and I think Paul would even agree, probably has a little bit of a higher ceiling than a Garoppolo, but I think the floor is lower because we've seen him struggle at times. So I'm more towards the roll the dice and a guy with a higher ceiling mode. I think Paul might lean the other way. I'll let him speak for himself. I was not encouraged by what Fields did in Pittsburgh this year, but he certainly has the talent, whether it's the athleticism or arm strength. If he can just figure out, reading the defense, anticipation, decision-making, those types of things, he could figure it out. Can Brian Dable get that out of him? I don't know. I think it would probably look a lot more like the Giants' offense in 2022 looked if you bring in a guy like Justin Fields, personally, with the way you use the quarterback in the run game and things like that. At least that's how I look at that particular point you made.
Dave, I would say this. One of the reasons that I think Garoppolo could mitigate some of that risk is because he can play quick game. We know that he has an ability to deal because of his time in San Francisco with getting the ball out, using the West Coast style of offense where you're not going to hold the ball very long. So that tends to somewhat mitigate the pass rush. Also, I know it was before he had his ACL, but he was a guy who you could roll the pocket with. He wasn't a statue now. We're not talking about Kurt Warner here. He's got a little more escapability than that. And I think the other thing that I probably haven't said on the show before, maybe I've said it once, when he was with the Patriots in 2016 behind Tom Brady and they won a Super Bowl championship, Brian Dable was on the Patriots staff. So Dable knows Garoppolo really well. And so if he thinks that there's a way to make him effective or work in his playbook, there's a lot of potential good fits there, a lot of boxes to check. But, hey, you know what?
I hope that Dable isn't going to base his decision based on what Garoppolo did 9 years
ago. No. But there's an inherent knowledge of the player. And to be frank, if you really wanted a guy with a lot of mobility, you probably want to consider Marcus Mariota because he's got a lot of mobility. And quite honestly, so does Taylor Heineke. Heineke's another guy who's going to be a free agent who's got some mobility.
I'm not a Heineke guy.
He isn't as mobile as Mariota.
No. But they've got some legs. Yeah. I mean, look, take whichever guy off the shelf you want. It sounds like you're still on board with going for a bridge, and it's up to you to pick which guy you want off the shelf. I'm not gonna fight you on that.
I think listen, if those guys evaluated Sanders and Ward as being a guy that they want to bet, because let's one thing I want to say, being a general manager in the NFL in particular, you're a professional gambler. That's what your job is.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. And listen, I got to tell you, I think that Shane's batting average as a professional gambler is not that high, and that's what gives me pause. But anyway, I was very encouraged by what you guys were talking about with the O-line because, and I've tweeted this at you guys, I am not a fun guy. Maybe as a, to get from where we are to functional is fine. I want to strive to have a top 5 or 6 offensive line.
That's great.
And
I'm with you.
And because when you have a top 5 or 6 offensive line, so many other things are positive and have, much bigger upside. I don't know if I would like to think that there's a really good, solid offensive lineman available to us in the second round. The 2 guys I have my eye on, Will Campbell from LSU and Tate Rutledge from Georgia as a guard. Those are the 2 guys that I like, that I've seen play enough to actually have an opinion. But I think we need 3 new pieces from free agent and draft that are available and ready to start or fill in. But one thing, and I know...
Well, Dave, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. If you really want someone that you want to come in and play at a high level right away, don't count on rookies.
Well, except that there are some rookies that buck that idea. Alt, until he got hurt at the end of the year, I think Fashioner was doing, a very decent job. They're out there. It happens.
No, it does, Dave, but I would say none of the prospects in this draft class are close to either one of those 2 guys you just mentioned.
Dave, I'm going to throw something at you. Yesterday we mentioned...
Then we got to do something real in free agency because I've seen enough of Azudu. I don't think he's a real, starting offensive lineman. Neal, the only thing left for him is to move to guard. And see how he does there. But I'm done with Azudu. I'm sorry, Dave, he's shown me nothing.
Yesterday, Matt mentioned to me Kevin Zeitler. Now he's 35 years old.
Yeah, it's a little old for me.
I think that's kind of on the backside for me.
We already got one of those in Van Roten.
I think he's better than that. I think Zeitler's a good player,
I agree with that.
But I don't know if at this stage of his career, how much money is he going to want? I don't know. You bring him in as a 1-year deal.
Wouldn't he rather stay and try to compete for a Super Bowl in Detroit? That's what I would do if I were him.
Yeah.
How would you leave Detroit to go to a team that won 3 games?
Zeitler's going to have zero.
He's free though.
Coming to the Giants.
Again, and how much money do you want to throw at him?
Well, that's my point, though. I think then to entice him away,
it's going to cost.
You got
I was not in favor of it.
And neither would I be.
He threw out Zeitler, and I kind of shied away from it. Yeah. But I'm simply asking you: would you want to go that route or that style instead of going for a young guy who, quite honestly, if he's got to get thrown in there, is a roll of the dice?
If Zeitler was 28, I'd say yeah.
Yeah, well, you couldn't touch him. You couldn't afford him if he was 28.
Yeah,
they already did, and look how much they had to pay, and then they had to cut him.
Because they decided they'd rather have Kenny Galladay.
Yeah. I don't want to deal with that one.
Commercial for Van Roten. I love this guy. Van Roten is the ultimate. He's like a Parcells offensive lineman.
Oh yeah.
Pale, steady, shows up I love this. It swings, center, guard, tackle. Who doesn't love Van Roten?
Well, Dave, I want to ask you something because I think I remember you tweeting this to me the other day, and I'm with you on Van Roten. Did I see you tweet to me, and I think that you want to cut Jermaine Illuminor? What?
No, that wasn't me. I love Illuminor.
Oh, okay. I could have sworn. I thought I heard you say you need to cut J.E. I thought you said, okay.
No, not me. No, God, where would we be? But
okay, good.
Andrew Thomas. I don't think I would be shocked if Andrew Thomas was ready week 1. And by the way, depth on the offensive line is not a priority; it's a necessity because we cannot continue this madness. Every year when Andrew Thomas goes down with an injury, it's like the game of Kerplunk. You take one stick out with Andrew Thomas's name on it, and all the marbles fall.
No, and Dave, this is why I know Paul's more interested in adding a guard. That's why I'm more interested, I think, in adding a tackle. Because then it's a lot easier to move Illuminor out the left tackle. You already have your starting right tackle in place, and then you're okay. So that's why I would probably favor adding a tackle, just because it frees up Illuminor to then be your swing tackle if he's maybe, let's say, starting at guard in week 1. So that's why I go back and forth. That's why I kind of feel that way.
Are you counting on Andrew Thomas?
No. This is my point. Andrew Thomas is your starting left tackle. You bring in somebody to start a right tackle. Illuminor is a starting guard. And then if Thomas can't play, Illuminor slides out the left tackle for you.
By the way, when we talked to Andrew Thomas at the end of the season, he was not giving anybody a timetable, but he seemed extremely optimistic that he was going to be available sometime in the spring, and certainly by
start of camp for sure.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to even be in doubt. Just so you know, Dave, it doesn't even seem to be a question.
But so he'll be good for another 6 games before something happens. I mean,
Dave, I get you, but how much money are you going to pour into one position?
Yeah, I mean, you've invested in him as your sure thing. You can't just walk away.
If you don't invest in the right kind of depth, like I said,
Dave, that's what I'm saying. That's why I want to bring in a tackle.
Marbles fall.
No, but that's why, Dave. That's my plan. That's what I'm saying. That's why you bring in a tackle.
And I want to say another thing. We've talked about the injury bug with the Giants being a big setback the last 3, 4, 5 years. Look at the Detroit Lions. I mean, there is one of the things that Shane suffers from. I think he suffers from comparison. Look at what the Lions do despite their just devastating injuries. Look at what the Commanders did in 1 year. You know, this is why I think he's on the hot seat. If I'm the owner, I'm looking at these other teams lapping us, and saying, what do I got here? Exactly. What kind of decisions are these guys making that these teams who suffer a whole bucket load of injuries, look at the Vikings, I mean, who we beat 2 years ago, and look where they are. That's where the pressure, I think, on Shane is he suffers by comparison with other teams.
All right, Dave. Appreciate the call, my friend. Good to hear from you. Look, the Commanders found Jaden Daniels. That's been the difference. If the Commanders ran it back with Taylor Heineke this year, guess what? They would have won 7 games. They would have won 7 games. They had, 5 wins this year, which came down to the last play of the game or some ridiculous number like that?
Yep.
So you take Jaden Daniels out, you put Taylor Heineke in, or whoever else you want to throw into that mix. Maybe they're a little bit better because of what Dan Quinn's did on defense, maybe. But it's the quarterback.
Okay,
the Giants tried to get one last year. It didn't work.
Now, Dave's a great caller, but I have to, unfortunately, debunk his comment about the Lions. Because...
it's their defense, Paul.
No, he was talking about their offensive line.
No, I think he was just meant generally the Lions have had a lot of injuries, and their injuries have come on defense.
Okay, because
their offense has been healthy.
That's what I thought. I thought he was saying that the Giants' offensive line has been terribly banged up, and look at the Lions. Well, guess what? Their Lions' offense, Penei Sewell, 17 starts. We go down to Glasgow, 16 starts. We go to Ragnow, 16 starts. I mean... Decker, 14 starts. They were
on offense. They've been fine. Their defense has been a disaster, injury-wise.
Absolutely. But the point being, if we're talking about building a team from the trenches, and the offensive line is such an important component of that, well, is it any wonder why the Detroit Lions are where they are with an offensive line that's been healthy and together almost the whole season? When we are already prioritizing in the first half hour of this program how important a offensive line is to a team, doesn't that compute?
It does. No, I'm with you.
Anyway.
All right, 201-939-4513. Let's go back to the phone and say hi to Tim in Charleston. Hi, Tim.
Hey, John. Hey, Paul. How you doing?
What's going on?
So I got two things. One, I want to recap my predictions, since get that out of the way before it gets too stale. First, eating a little crow because my Daniel Jones prediction went up in flames.
All of ours did. It wasn't just you, Tim. That you're in a large flaming vat with a lot of other people. Don't worry about it.
That did not go well.
Yeah, my prediction that our safeties alone would have 10 interceptions sank like the Titanic. But then I did predict that we would be within 10 sacks differential from last year, where we were like minus 54 or whatever it was, and we were only minus 3 this year in sacks. So I got that one. And the other one I'm going to take a mulligan on, because I predicted that that between Dexter, Burns, and Thibodeau, they would have 25 sacks. They ended up with 23, and both Dexter and Thibodeau each missed 5 games. So I'm taking a mulligan on that one.
No, that's fair. That's a good one.
So that's not too bad, considering how the season went.
Now, you did have 31 plus takeaways, Tim, was another one you had.
I think you missed that one by just a little bit.
I forgot that one. What was that one?
Yeah, you had 31 or more takeaways, but a lower turnover differential than last year. You did have the lower turnover differential part right, but you did not have the 31 plus takeaways right.
Oops.
All right, and by the way, Tim, since you're calling up, Tim, I'm going to erase these off of our document in terms of bold predictions, all right, since we just reviewed them here.
There you go.
Yeah. So the other thing is I was going to say in response to Paul, and you ended up saying it, John, and Mr. Maris talk about, better depth on the offensive line. I agree with you, John, that we definitely, I don't know if we have to get a starting tackle, but we need to get somebody who can be an established swing tackle. I have no problem. If Evan Neal can move inside to guard, I have no problem with Illuminor and Thomas as our starting tackles. But we've got to have somebody who we know can back them up and not have a complete degradation of the line.
See, Tim, here's the problem, though. If you want to go out there and get a starting tackle, right? That is, even an average starting tackle is going to cost you more than $50 million a year.
Absolutely.
Now, they were lucky enough to find an Illuminor last year that cost less than that. If they can pull that out of their hat again, God bless them. I'm all for it, but they're hard to find. So while that's the solution I'm proposing, I do not have a great way to actually execute that plan, but it's a plan for whatever that's worth to you.
Yeah, I like Van Roten, as a backup guard center, and then I think, the question is, can Neal actually play guard? We know he's good in the running game, so that's a positive.
Now,
but,
Tim, how about this? I'm going to throw one name at you, and this is a name that Charlie brought up before, and I've always rolled my eyes at it, and I thought the Jaguars severely overpaid him when they paid him a few years ago. But he got traded. Vikings? Was he on?
Cam Robinson, right?
I believe he's a free agent after the year.
Is he?
He might be. I got to double check that.
I'll look for you.
But that is one name that I've thought about as, again, not someone I'd want to go out there and start week 1 and feel great about, but to see someone that you could, and he's more of a left tackle than a right tackle too, which is the other tricky part of this one too.
He is free.
He's free, right? So again, and he's not great. He's not Cam Robinson, what is he, 29?
29.
That's good.
And his cap number was only $2.5 million this year, which is ridiculously low for a guy who could potentially be a starter because he made so much money with Jacksonville.
Yeah, what was the last contract he signed? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Look at the money.
That's a lot of money.
He was up in double digits.
Yeah, he made $60 million over 7 years, and that includes his rookie deal. So you can do the math on that.
I mean, I don't think he's coming into anybody else's situation for a similar deal to what he just got from the Vikings. He's going to want a heck of a lot more than that.
3 years, $52 million was his last contract with Jacksonville.
Yeah, and the Vikings got him on a 1-year bargain.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
That was just one name that's kind of popped out of me where, again, more of a left tackle than a right tackle.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Didn't he play some right tackle in Jacksonville? I don't remember.
I don't remember that.
I will look that up. I don't remember that either.
He was always considered an underachiever there.
Yeah, he was. I agree. But again, it's just a guy that started a lot and has played. If you're going to start a Illuminor right tackle and he's your swing in your insurance, then theoretically, if Andrew gets hurt, you could just slide him out to left tackle.
Do you think, though, he's willing to become a swing guy?
No, probably not. I think he's going to get starting money somewhere because teams are desperate for left tackles.
Right. He's going to want to be a tackle, and he's going to want money to be a starting left tackle, and I don't see how you could possibly get him, anywhere near the price that you're willing to pay.
I think that's a really good point. I don't have a great comeback for that one, Paul. Like I said, I have an idea, I have a plan, but it gets difficult to execute because offensive tackles are so hard to find. And by the way, I'm going to have Sam Monson coming on Giants Huddle podcast a little bit later this week. I think we're recording on Wednesday. It's going to post Thursday or Friday, and we do a little free agency class primer that'll show up on the Giants Huddle later this week. So that'll be fun. So I'm looking. He has not played one snap on the right side of the offensive line. Every snap has been at left tackle, except for 2 at left guard. So there you go.
How about this guy?
Yeah, I know. And he visited here with the Giants, according to reports earlier. That's DJ Humphries. How old is he? 31?
I think
He's a
32.
guy you could talk about again. Is he going to find, now that he's healthy, remember he was coming off a knee injury.
Yep.
Is he going to find a starting job somewhere?
32 years old. Okay, current average salary is $5 million a year.
And he's with the Chiefs right now, starting at left tackle.
Okay. Again, a guy who probably would not be real thrilled about walking away from Mahomes and a winning Chiefs organization. But how do they feel about paying him, given that he has come off injury? Could you possibly woo him?
How about Cornelius Lucas? He's like, okay, offensive tackle.
Well, this is why you're trying to thread the needle, because it's hard.
I would put him in the Cam Robinson category in terms of quality of player.
Robinson, I think, would be a little higher for me.
Okay, but they're close.
Yeah. And Lucas has been a starter, and he's going to want some money.
That's why it's tricky.
I know.
It's tricky. Paul, Wilson has done his homework, and he has.
Has he really?
That's what he says.
The homework is in. All right. Well, let's see. I'll get out the red marker. We'll see what we can do to mark it up.
All right. I'm gonna give you my homework, and then I'm gonna ask you guys something.
Go ahead, Wilson.
So this is my homework, Paulie.
Yep.
All right. But this is my homework, and I'm the general manager, so I know you're not going to agree. But this is
I don't have to agree.
Right now. Okay.
The point was, I just wanted you to do the work.
Okay. Well, here we go. So I had a private meeting with John Mara and Steve Tisch, and they told me, Wilson, you are not drafting a quarterback. You better not be the laughing stock of the NFL again. You better not be out of it by Halloween, and we better be at least relevant in December. That's what Mr. Matt told me on a private meeting.
Okay.
Last week.
Okay.
Last week. So I have to work under those premises.
Okay.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see. There's only 2 quarterbacks that you can call professional quarterbacks that are out there. It's Jimmy G and Justin Fields. Which is crazy because we had a guy in Daniel that's 10 times better than those 2 guys, but that's nor here or there. He's gone. So somehow I have to make it work with those 2 guys because Mr. Matt told me you're not drafting a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick. You're not doing that because if you're 5 and 12, you're not back here anyway. So I don't care what everybody says on the outside, Paulie. The rainbows and roses. That's not reality. Reality is that Mr. Matt told me, I don't want any more planes. I want to be competitive. I don't want to be the last stock, and I don't want to be out of it.
Okay, we got you.
Halloween.
Yes.
Right. So I have to do that. I have to somehow get a receiver, and about 75% of my cap, I have to spend it on defense. That's what I got to do because I need to win 8 games.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't know. Now, all the other general managers in the NFL, are they going to think I'm crazy for doing that?
Well, Wilson.
No, I don't think so.
Consider that Mr. Mara told
right, Johnny,
us,
so Johnny, is that? I know a lot of people live in La La Land, and they don't think reality. That to me is about 75. Maybe it's a little extreme. That's 75%, Johnny, of the reality of the New York Giants.
Look, I will just say this, Wilson. I do not think ownership will forbid the front office from drafting a quarterback or from not drafting a quarterback.
Yeah.
I think they will leave it up to them. But in terms of being more competitive next year, yeah, I think ownership expects the team to be more competitive.
That
Absolutely,
mandate
100%.
has already been put down.
Yes.
Okay, but here's what I like about what you said, Wilson, because Mr. Mara told all of us, and obviously he told you the same thing. Not only do you have to be competitive, but you have addressed his desire for a quarterback. You've addressed his desire to improve the defense. In fact, defense was his number 2 priority, and you said you want to put 75% of your cap money on the defense. So you've addressed both of them. The one thing that you didn't address yet, though, was offensive line. Do you have a plan for that?
Well, Paulie, listen, offensive linemen, if there's a good offensive lineman out there, teams usually don't let him go.
Right.
You got to be lucky, Paulie. You can't go and spend $50 million on an offensive lineman. That's not. It's not.
No doubt.
That's counterproductive.
How high would you take one though in the draft?
You got to be lucky, Paulie.
No, I know, and we agree with you. Okay,
right.
But if you were going to take one in the draft to kind of fortify that third priority, how high would you go? Would you go third round? Second round? How high would you go to get a lineman?
Paulie, I don't do like this. Listen, I go second round. Second round, and even Paulie, you listen. And this you have to give. You have to be lucky and hit somebody on the draft, and maybe like a second tier free agent. You can, if there's somebody good, he's staying with the team that they're on. I mean, you know how it is.
Or we'll say he's going to get overpaid so much that the Giants can't afford
What
him.
you want to hope is that a guy like Ryman, who was drafted late and is a prospect.
Now, it took a couple years for him to get there. Though. That's the thing.
It did. But you have to put some faith in Carmen Brasillo, that if you get somebody that he can mold, he might be able to get something really good and get a diamond in the rough.
Paulie, I understand what you're saying, but I'm the general manager. I know nobody wants to believe it, but this is my year. If I win 5 games, I'm out of here. I don't care what everybody says. If I win 5 games, I'm out of here, and Brian Dable's out of here. That's reality, Paulie. John Mara cannot come back again next year and tell Giant fans, "Hey, listen, we won 5 games, but I see that that's not going to fly."
Wilson, I'm grading your homework a B+. Okay.
Good job.
I'm giving you a B+. And if we grade you on your own personal grade, it's an A, because it's much better than most of your comments. But this was a good call for you.
So is the Wilson curve?
I know you don't like hypotheticals and everything, but let me tell me, asking me something. Am I wrong, Johnny? If they win 5, I know you like this guy's personally. Forget about that. But if they win 5 games, so again. If they win 5 games next year again, I don't care, quarterback, I don't care. I don't care. Rookie, veteran, I don't care. They win 5 games, Johnny. I mean, now, come on. Now.
Ask the question. I'm waiting for you actually asking me the question, Wilson.
I know, but so people have to realize that Joe Shane has to work and Brian Dable, for that matter. They have to work in those parameters. They got to win. They got to win games.
Look, Wilson, I get it, and appreciate the call. Look, I'll answer the question that he wanted to ask me, but for some reason he just refused to actually spit the question out. Look, if the Giants win 5 games next year, John Mara said, I'm going to have to be in a much better mood at this time next year than I am this year.
Yeah.
And if they win 5 games, I don't think he's going to be in a very good mood.
Probably
so I'll just leave it at that.
Did you have a grade for his homework, by the way?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, B+,
I would have liked
right?
a little bit more detail on how he would allocate the money on defense. But we've talked to Wilson enough where I know he needs defensive backs. We need the defensive tackle. So I think he's on the right track there. I'm okay with that. It's fine.
Yeah.
He said we should have, next time he calls up Wilson, call up next week. Maybe talk about what kind of receiver he's looking for too.
Yeah, you could do that.
Because this is not a great receiver draft. It's rare that we don't have a great receiver draft. This is not a great receiver draft. So I think maybe this is a free agency year in the draft, because I think you're going to start getting more receivers available in free agency, because the last few receiver drafts have been so good, and so many of these rookie contracts are taking up roster spots that teams are not going to want to pay money for veterans, even though they might be okay to good players but not great players. You might be able to get some value on the free agency receiver market a little bit, just because of the quantity of good players there are around the league at that position. So,
Makes
again,
sense.
or maybe you want to bring back Slayton. I don't know what the Giants are thinking in that way, but I think you could maybe find, and I haven't looked at the free agent wide receiver list. Again,
I haven't either.
I'll do that with Sam when he comes on the Giants Huddle podcast later in the week. So, but look, and Paul, we've kind of talked about this at lunch the other day. With all the things the Giants need to fix and get better at and do better at, with the schedule the way it is next year, it's a tough slog this offseason to fix all the problems.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have to really maximize your assets, whether it's draft picks or free agency money, and really make the most out of all of them. And the guys you've acquired over the last 2 or 3 years are going to have to play as well as you think they can play. That's how it's going to have to happen.
Well, last year when we talked about the draft, one of the things that we said, and I'm having trouble pulling up that list, but one of the things we talked about is that they had to hit the draft in 2024. They needed guys who were going to give them legitimate quality snaps.
And by the way,
they did.
They did. Wasn't enough.
And it still wasn't enough.
Because the guys from the prior 2 classes didn't take the jump. And that's what we said, right?
That was part 2. That was part 2.
That was honestly part 1.
Okay.
That was the most important thing, right?
Yeah,
that was the most important thing to happen, because you got 2 classes and a better chance of first and second year guys getting better than rookies coming in and doing good right away.
Okay, fair enough.
But I get your point. Yes, you hit on the draft, but the other stuff didn't come out the way you wanted it to.
So now, again, for the second year in a row, we're going to sit here and say it is imperative that they get some production out of their rookie class right away. It's just that simple, especially when you're drafted as high as you are, John. I mean, they have premium picks. They got to do well. Boy, there's a bunch of names on the wide receiver free agent list. Oh, my goodness.
Lay them out to me. What do you got?
Oh, Diggs, Higgins, Keenan Allen. Amari Cooper's on the long side of the tooth.
And Keenan Allen's on the long side of the tooth, too.
But these guys have got good resumes.
And
Chris Godwin.
T. Higgins is going to get a lot of money.
Oh, sure he is. You see one of my guys is on that list again? DeAndre Hopkins. Again, he's on the long side, but he keeps producing. What doesn't he do?
He did not have a great year this year, though.
Not as much as in the past, but Mike Williams, obviously landed with the Steelers after it didn't work out with the Jets.
Issues. Brandon Cooks on that list.
But there's
Chris
names
Godwin
here.
Coming off a knee injury.
There's names here.
Deontay Johnson, though, the way that he did not help himself with the way he completed his football season this year.
No.
Needless to say.
No.
Yeah, Mike Williams, I mean, I don't know how much he has left in the tank after that injury. Robert Woods, Hollywood Brown.
A lot of names.
Speed.
Not necessarily product or production that matches those names, but a lot of names.
I got one for you. You mentioned him. You know who loved Stephon Diggs in Buffalo? Brian Dable.
So you think Diggs would be a possibility?
I guarantee you, a 30-year-old wide receiver coming off a knee injury. He's not going to be that expensive. Does he want to come to a rebuilding team? I don't know. Does he fit in a rebuilding team with his personality quirks? I don't know the answer to that either. I'm only saying I don't think, given his past production, he would be overly expensive. And I'll leave it there.
He does improve the room.
I'm not saying they should do it. I'm not saying they will do it. It's just an interesting connection that's out there. This is not me, folks, reporting anything or saying anyone has said a word to me about anything.
Just somebody who hypothetically intrigues you. How about that?
We talked about trying to maximize your dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a shot at not spending a lot of money for a guy that could theoretically give you high-end production based on his past. And there is a connection to the coach.
And he has certainly made a ton of money. I mean, it's not like he's hurting for nickels and dimes.
You never make enough money, though.
Okay.
You know how that is.
I know. There's always room for more.
There's always room for more.
This is true.
I mean, have you seen all the commercials the Mannings are on?
Yes, I actually have. And now they're going to do a kicking competition, right?
You name it, they're down for it.
My, oh, my.
Hey, you know what? I will give them the credit because for them, I don't think honestly it's about the money with them. I was just making a joke.
They're just fun dudes.
I think they just like doing stuff. I think
I
they
do
want to
too.
stay busy. I think they want to stay attached to the league and engaged. And I think that's why they do what they do. To be honest.
Did you see Eli's comment the other day on television when he was asked about would you like to own part of an NFL team?
What do you say?
He said maybe he'd like to get maybe 10% if he could, but the only team that he would want to take a shot would be with the Giants. And he said, I don't know if the Giants are looking to do anything like that.
Remember,
but he's a Giant for life.
Here's the problem with that. Remember, right now it's at a 50-50 split.
Right.
So you would have to take the same exact amount.
You'd have
from
to go
both,
5 and 5.
Yeah, you have to go 5 and 5 from the Tish and the Barra family to do something like that.
And I don't know that you get everybody to agree to that, but
yes,
he was
correct.
very serious when he's like, I'd like to take a shot, but he goes, I would only be interested in the Giants.
I could see
which
him
is awfully admirable.
Could you see him and Peyton pooling their money together and trying to go in as a team? Could see that. And they have, between the two of them, they have plenty of cash. Or now what you can do too, right? You can go in with one of these VCs because remember that's the thing now.
Yes.
The league passed that rule where you can sell to venture capitalists, people not even in America. If you team up with one of those groups, then that could be a way for you to get into an ownership group.
Eli,
just throwing out ideas.
I got some money.
So how much could you pull together? What, like 1/10, 100th of 1% of the Giants?
Oh, I got a few dollars in here.
All right. That's Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. This was fun. It'll be Sytak and Dottino tomorrow, me and Sytak on Thursday, and then Paul and I are back with you on Friday. No show next Monday for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And then we have shows the rest of that week. And then the following week, we are off to the Senior Bowl and Shrine Game and all that other good stuff. And Paul and Matt will carry us that week. For Paul Dottino and Pearson Butler, I'm John Schmeelk. Thanks for being with us on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Good conversation, good calls today, folks. I thought it was a good show. We'll see you next time.